Hi guys, it's Miss McClellan, and today we're going to continue talking about the Reign of Terror. So Maximilien Robespierre, if you remember, he is the leader of the Jacobins and sort of the mastermind behind the Reign of Terror. And one of the things he did was he tried to do away with religion in France, and he did this in a few ways. He considered himself to be very principled about the revolution, obviously, so he sort of created this new, not religion, but it was more like a cult, and it was called the Republic of Virtue to replace Roman Catholicism. So basically, instead of worshiping a god or like ideas from the Bible, you worshipped ideals of the revolution, and you had to be very loyal to the revolution. He introduced something called the cult of the Supreme Being to replace worship of the Christian God, and he would actually lead a lot of these like cult processionals. There were still lots of counter-revolutionaries living in France, so it wasn't like everyone was on board with what Robespierre was doing. In fact, Jacobins frequently sent agents in Paris and the outer provinces as sort of undercover agents to try and sort of dig out anti-revolutionary activity and arrest people when they found people doing things or saying things that went against the revolution. One of the more radical things that Robespierre and the Jacobins did was they passed the law of suspects. And this was passed after the Jacobins started to get a bit nervous, because you know that France was fighting several revolutionary wars. And they were nervous that when these foreign countries were coming in and sort of taking over parts of France, that it was going to create an opportunity for counter-revolutionaries to sort of gain some power. So they got nervous and they said, okay, we have to get rid of our enemies quick. So they passed something called the law of suspects, and basically it said that people could be arrested on the basis of accusation rather than evidence. So if you were guilty, it was pretty vague whether or not you were guilty, but it wasn't like you got a lawyer. It was just a group of Jacobin leaders who decided whether or not you were guilty. And so usually they would say that you were, even if there was no evidence to prove it. And if you were found guilty, a lot of the times you were executed. And it's estimated that around 40,000 people were killed during the Reign of Terror. And like we talked about last class, some people say that the Reign of Terror was necessary to keep the revolution going, and others say that it was senseless violence. And that is an opinion question that you can decide for on your own. So other revolutionary groups obviously are pretty alarmed by what's going on. They think that the Jacobins are taking it too far, especially with the law of suspects. They think that Robespierre's rule needs to come to an end. He's just taken everything too far. And they felt that because France was making progress in the Revolutionary Wars, that it was probably a good time around, and this is 1794, the year we're in, that it was a good time to start to oppose Robespierre. So they finally did in something called the Thermidorian reaction. And it's called that because it happened in Thermidor, which is the name of the month in the new French calendar in which this occurred. But basically, the current French government, called the Convention, decided to oppose Robespierre, and they had him arrested in 1794. When he was, 80,000 prisoners were released from jail, prisoners that had been put in jail because they quote-unquote went against the revolution. Robespierre attempted to commit suicide, and he failed. And on July 28th, he was executed. 90 of his colleagues were also executed. So the Jacobins are no longer in power. Robespierre has been executed, and you're going to see that it leads to sort of a lack of leadership and sort of a weak government. And the name of this weak government is called the Directory. So new name, new government. You know by now that during the revolution a new government was established every couple of months, and they all had different names. This one was established after Robespierre was executed in 1795. And when this new government was established, they started to move away from the extremism that Robespierre and the Jacobins had created. So they drew up a new constitution, which created this new government called the Directory. It had two councils, two groups, kind of like how in the United States we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. They had one council that their job was to propose laws, and the other one their job was to accept or reject it. They also nominated people named directors who were normally from the middle class, and their job was to sort of appoint other people, like government ministers and army leaders and tax collectors. And this all sounds good on the surface, but they faced a lot of problems. The government was still almost bankrupt. The continuing war with foreign monarchies was expensive. And even though the Reign of Terror was over, there were still lots of factions, which means divisions, that were still in France. You had royalists, people who were loyal to the king. You had Jacobins. You had moderates. You had other revolutionary groups, and they were all fighting for their own agendas. So it was hard to have any unity and get a lot done. One good thing that did happen was that the Directory had the support of the army. So whenever there were uprisings, the Directory could use the army to sort of suppress them and keep them down. The Jacobins are still around. They even plotted to sort of overthrow the Directory, but they failed. So the Directory sticks around for a little bit, and you're going to see that it sticks around until a man named Napoleon Bonaparte decides that he is going to overthrow it. And that is a topic for another class. Make sure that you take notes and write your 2 to 3 sentence summary and write your questions. Have a great day.